All right, Bob, how are you doing?
Pretty good, Steve. How about you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks.
Good.
Thanks again for some time to come in and visit with you today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
When we spoke on the phone, one of the things I'd shared with you, I've done a little bit of homework on Seagull Consulting, and I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with kind of where you guys are in a relatively short period of time. You've certainly established yourself in the market well, and seem to be on a really nice growth track.
We've been working hard at it. Got to tell you that.
Yeah, well, good. Well, I like to see that because we've had the pleasure of working with some companies like yourself, not necessarily in the management consulting business, but companies who are also on a pretty aggressive growth path and have a nice, bright future. And I think we've had some pretty decent success in helping them kind of get where they're trying to go. So
okay.
I hope this kind of goes in that same direction. We have a chance to work with you all.
All right. Well, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. Well, to get to that point, honestly, what I'd like to do is, as I mentioned on the phone, just today I'd like to learn as much as I can about you guys, your world, even you personally a little bit, and what your business objectives are, kind of where you're trying to go, and see if there might be a decent fit between Carew and Seagull. And if that's agreeable to you, I'd like to just kind of launch into asking you some different questions.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay. Is it okay if I take some notes?
That's fine, and I think we'll probably have time for that.
Okay, great. Well, let's start with, like I said, I did a little bit of homework, and I saw some of the markets that you guys are into. Why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the kinds of companies you work with and what maybe in particular you look for with some of your customers?
Well, change management has always been a big deal. I mean, we've been dealing with change management for 50 years now in terms of it being a kind of an intellectual subject. But these days in particular, there's so many mergers and acquisitions going on. So much money is involved, productivity, getting the merged companies working together and up to speed as quickly as possible. That's been the focus of our business. And for the most part, not so much in the service sector as much as in the manufacturing and pretty much the manufacturing and distribution sectors.
Okay, great. How many different consultants do you have that work with your external clients?
Right now, we've got 30 of them.
Okay.
And some of them, if they come out of consumer goods or whatever, that they may specialize in that. But we've got 30 people that in one way or another seem to understand change management and the dynamics of what goes on in an organization when they're dealing with a lot of major change all at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay, good. And how long have you been in this industry or this business?
Well, counting some of the when I was working inside corporations, had to deal with it as a concept. So when you add it all up, about 10 or 12 years.
Okay, all right, good. And do you look for any particular level of experience among these 30 folks when you hire them? Is there a background that you like to see in them, or?
Management experience helps.
Okay.
Management experience at different levels helps.
Okay.
And not working at the same company all of their careers, so that they get a sense that management and supervision can be different in different organizations.
Gotcha. Okay, great. As you work with your customers, once you identify a prospect, what are some of the things that you're hoping you can ultimately accomplish with that customer? What's your big focus?
The big focus, it has to be somewhat responsive to what they say, but for the most part is to help them understand that we can work with them so that they can get through that, particularly the initial transition period, quickly. If there's any really tough things that need to be done, getting those taken care of with minimal uproar in the organization, and get people working on a new kind of headed all in the same direction as quickly as possible.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's great. That's good. Thanks for sharing that with me. Relative to that initial transition, is there a typical period of time, or what impacts the amount of time it takes an organization to typically get up to speed?
It's really two things. The one thing, the most obvious, is just the size of the two organizations. But the other thing that almost always is the big factor is how different their two cultures were. If they were somewhat similar, that's a lot easier than if they were quite dissimilar, and it's even more difficult if they were mortal enemies. Now, we've never had to work with Coke and Pepsi in a merger, but if they were like that, that makes it all that much more complicated. Because you got a lot of, in addition to the organizational structural issues, you've got culture issues and morale and that sort of stuff.
Okay. So in the context of a real sales call, let's say this went longer and I was able to gather more general. Now I'm going to get focused on sales training. So as you think about training, what are some of your objectives? Because you're considering working with Carew.
Right.
What are you looking for in regards to training these 30 people?
Well, I've got a bunch of really qualified people when it comes to dealing with all the dynamics of change management. The tough thing for them is getting them to that point. They're really good at working with our customers, working with senior managers and non-management. But I have to send somebody out when we're proposing something like this, and it seems to me that we'd be a lot better off if they had some idea how to present themselves, how to sell. And a lot of them, frankly, a lot of them don't like that idea. They think their expertise ought to stand on its own.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But it would be helpful if they had an idea. Because what they don't totally understand is that they're oftentimes competing with other similar consulting organizations, and how they come across in an initial presentation with a client makes a lot of difference.
Okay. So what I heard you say was presentation skills, and even to some extent the awareness of a sales process, what's involved, how customers make decisions.
Yeah,
that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So the
and I think that when I say they need to know about selling, that captures it pretty well.
Okay, good. Are those the only two areas that you have a concern around in terms of what you would like to focus on?
Yes, and when I say presentation, it's just how they present themselves, not necessarily. We've got a couple of people, my partners and I, will make major presentations in a boardroom setting.
Okay.
But how they present themselves when they have to meet with people and come in for some of the initial contacts.
I see. So is it selling that they're asked to do, or is the deal already done and they come into the picture once you're trying to figure out how to help the customer?
Typically, they come in while the deal is being considered.
Oh, okay.
Almost all of our clients will want to know who's going to be working with us, and they'll want to speak with them. And so usually it's part of the consideration process, but they don't take the lead.
Gotcha.
On presentations.
So that's why they may not need to be the lead salesperson, but they need to understand the process to know how it's working. And
well, that's exactly it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good. Well, great. Is there are there any other folks who would be involved in the decision once you guys kind of decide who all you're going to consider to bring in addition to yourself?
A decision on our part, you mean?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple partners.
I've got a couple partners that, unless I would give them some information that would concern them, they'll pretty much leave that decision up to me.
Okay. So for the most part, it's going to be your call?
For the most part, unless, if I all of a sudden decided two or three of you are almost exactly the same, I might bring them in on the process. But pretty much right now, it's
okay.
Just me.
Okay, good. And what would be some of the factors you guys are going to consider as you think about which organization you'll bring in to do the training?
Yeah, we're going to. One of the things that I have difficulty with when I think about buying sales training is, you don't have a tangible product, and I understand you're not going to give me a guarantee. Nobody could do that. But so one of the things will probably just a major criteria will be just the sense of comfort. Does it feel good? Does there seem like there's a nice interpersonal connection between your people and me and some of my others if we got them involved?
Okay. So a comfort level. Any other factors that would come into the decision?
It would help if you've got references that you've worked with other similar companies, but you say you have, so I'm going to take you at your word on that.
Okay. All right, good. So some references. Good. Anything else?
Yeah, well, one of the things, I don't know whether it's what you're looking for, but one of the things I'm really concerned about is that this is it's kind of a slippery topic. You go to Barnes & Noble and there's dozens of books on selling. So, there's a little bit that I wonder, couldn't we just do this with a book? And, you guys are not inexpensive by any means. I wonder, I'm just concerned about if we go through this and do all this, how we'd even have some idea whether it worked or not.
Right. Okay. Well, hopefully the references would speak to that. I mean, they would be able to tell you if it worked for them or not.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Good. Well, great. Well, is there anything else that we ought to talk about that you kind of had in mind that I should know today?
In terms of today, no. I think we'd be looking. Now, if we decide to go forward with you guys, we'd be looking for a little bit more detailed presentation, along with some of the references and all that. But anything that would give us an idea of just how it is that you'd approach our people and in as economical a way as possible, give them some good professional presentation of themselves, not speech making.
Sure, right, okay.
But so that would be a next step if we wanted to go forward.
Okay, well, that would be my goal, is to take all the things I've learned from you today, possibly talk to a couple of your partners if you felt like that was appropriate, to get their input of what they think would be important. And then we'll take all that information, we'll put a presentation together, and I'd love to schedule time to come back and kind of share with you how we would handle your situation.
That sounds pretty good. I'll tell you what, I'll get you their email addresses and their names. It might be a good idea for you to give them a call and get their sense of the same thing.
Oh, great. Well, great. Well, I appreciate your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, same here, Steve.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to work together.
Good to see you, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Okay.